Welcome back to another Zero Context Patreon. Start advertising my Patreon content one out of context theater moment at a time. Following the end of my holiday in the middle of the month, I started on Strike of the Sweepers, the fourth book of the Janitor series. Despite getting a delayed start in the month, I feel like I made a huge dent in the book already. We're now introduced to Professor Destin DeFleur. All of the jokes are made about his name. He's with a group of retired BEM members called the Silver Swiffers. They're too old to be a threat to anybody, so the BEM mainly leaves them alone. But Destin is apparently the leading expert in false language translation, which is so niche, but also highly convenient. But I wouldn't expect anything less from this series. Swiper's take on toxite characteristics, Ted went on. We have to be unalive twice. The first, stop living, only takes the toxite out of us. And Mr. Clean wanted to make sure we were useless without our toxite parts. He touched his eyes again. You're blind? Walter asked. Ted nodded. When the toxite half stops living, our eyesight goes with it. Some kind of cruel punishment. And there we have it. Right from the get-go, they knew that it was too dangerous to take, yet Mr. Clean believed so completely in his own BS and drank it anyway. At the school, Walter says that they're going to take down Director Garcia and reclaim his hammer and nail like they failed to do a few months earlier. He goes on to explain that he now has a name for all three hammers. Ninfa, Walter's hammer, Holga, Garcia's, and Belzora, Mr. Clean's. Walter goes on to explain that these were the names of the founding witches. Garcia then takes out the actual potion, but he seems rather reluctant to take it. Spencer tells the man that nobody is forcing him to do this, but it seems as though, despite Garcia's status as one of the three warlocks, he is somewhat powerless under Mr. Clean's control. He will unalive you, Director Garcia said, and he will unalive me for my failures. Okay, so Garcia knows that failure will result in his own unaliving. The man was afraid to drink the super potion not even 5 minutes earlier. At what point should you sit down and say, hey, my life isn't worth this? Maybe I should start helping out the people who are trying to put a stop to all of this. I understand that he's probably in a bad position, but come on, man. If Diz can work against the BEM, so can Garcia. Which is basically to drive the magic dump truck up the vertical wall where our heroes are hiding. Sounds great. Actually, it's magic, and despite the fact that they crawled in through the window, the magic of the truck means that they will always feel like their bottom is on the ground rather than sideways. As they wait by the elementary school, Min told them about Bernie asked Daisy how Bookworm is. She says no good, so Bernie asks what she's been feeding it. Daisy is confused because it doesn't seem to need food in the same way that any other living thing does. This is obviously upsetting to Bernie, who insists that Thingamajig needs trash instead of food. You know how much stuff they promised to do for me? Des said. He stood up straight, his lip curled in his stare. They lied and lied like a million times. The BEM doesn't do jack for me. Garcia wanted to lock me up with a bunch of rubbishes until my brain turned to mush. I'm glad he's not alive. It's getting to the point where I legit don't know why people are still signing on to the BEM anymore. Do I want to turn into a monster, and if I transform back into being a human, I'll be blind forever? Who is agreeing to that? They talk about the gate guards, but then Des says that there's a third super high up on the crane. The others don't believe him, but Des insists that his vision has been enhanced. He wants to go by himself, but Penny insists that he fly her up there, and she used the memory eraser on the other sweeper. However, Des complains that Penny, an adult woman, is too big for him to carry, which I suppose is fair enough, but one day Daisy gives him a plunger to use on Penny. Des's new talent hands can't grasp it. He wants to simply take the forgetting potion up to the other sweeper, but obviously everybody understands that if he can't hold the plunger, he won't be able to manipulate the spray bottle. Bernie grabs the walkie-talkie and is like, yeah, everything's okay. The shockwave? Oh, well, don't tell the boss, but I was chucking marshmallows at the fence to make s'mores. The guy on the other end isn't happy about that, but lets it go. Bernie then shows that there's Hershey chocolate wrappers, graham crackers, and then little bits of white goo in the fence. He thinks that they'd been toasting the marshmallows with the fence. Yum. Alan gets out the flashlight in order to try and find anything globified in there that isn't Des, but it's too cramped for him to properly swing it around, so it ends up being passed from person to person until Daisy realizes that it's the toilet seat. Spencer is only grateful that it's only the toilet seat and not the hole. We'll be waiting for Mr. Clean. Once he arrives, we'll take Belzora, extract the nail, and squeegee back to Earl. Spencer lets out a breath he didn't notice he'd been holding. If only their plans were ever that simple. If only their plans ever played out the way that they were supposed to. Spencer had a feeling in his gut that nothing about this was right. The fact that there's 170 more pages in this book tells you everything that you need to know about exactly how this is going to play out. It was an uncomfortable thought, especially now that Des knew about the Manualis Custodium. I'm sorry for saying this, but I don't think that Des is smart enough to do anything with that book. He'd probably insist that it was boring and stupid, even if Mr. Clean got a hold of the boy. They keep going, but the plungers are still chasing after them. One of the distraction ones gets to Daisy, and she's oblivious to the red light and cross traffic that she's barreling towards. Spencer spritzes her with the anti-toxic breath stuff, and she slams on the brakes, which causes several accidents for the nearby cars. Fortunately, the plugger following them is also thrown into oncoming traffic, and the rider was left dangling from the traffic light. As they continue on, the police car with the lights and sirens going falls behind them. Spencer looks through the manual and finds that tapping the brakes 3 times sends whoever is following you into a confused and forgetful state. The cruiser turns down a random side street. Spencer was suddenly grateful for his classmates and teacher. Mr. Clean wouldn't want so many witnesses. The dude has already unalived 2 of his allies and fellow warlocks, that we know of. I don't think that he's hesitated to do the same to a 6th grade teacher and a bunch of literal children. Man then radios in to say that he has gotten the book from the humanoid trash figure, and that bookworm ate his homework. Whoops. I wish that we gotten to see Min's initial reaction towards that thing. Spencer reads the full note to Daisy and Des. Olin explains that the vortex is another dimension where you can create literally anything from dust. Only the mentally strong can survive. This makes Daisy question if Des shouldn't stay behind. Once in there, they can only use the blower once, which will rip open a hole for 10 minutes. They're then attacked by a snake of toilet paper. At the end of it is a freaking TP mummy. They fight it, but the fight barely takes up any time before the mummy collapses and turns back into the same dust that's all around them. Right when they're thinking about how easy that it was, Daisy turns around to find dozens more TP mummies. If you like my content, you can become a member on Patreon. Now you can join for free and get access to all of my free stuff. For only $1 a month, you can have access to so much, including the context for all of this month's commentary and more. I'll see you next month, guys.